What if we call it Off Court with Addin?
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't know what to call this podcast yet.
Somebody give us a title. Somebody
Yeah.
give us a good name.
If you could comment down below of the options that we have available, what are good titles? Like, so what did you just say?
Off Court with Addin.
Off court with add-in. Between points?
Or like changeovers?
Yeah.
Something like that. We'll play around with it.
Hey guys, Adonis here with Justin, Coach Justin here at the Add-in Adventures office. We're going to talk about a couple of things that Justin has in mind because of a conversation that we had with a client.
She was saying she is having issues finding a solid, consistent partner across the board. So she gets put with a couple different people. And it's one of those funny things where I think if you're a good enough adaptable player, you can kind of play with anyone. The challenge, though, of course, is like we all would love a long-term partner, someone that we can kind of commit to and build and grow with. And like if we're talking about a deep dive with this, it's very interesting because it's so important to understand like your tennis on-court personality. And if we were gonna summarize like the different ends of that kind of spectrum, at least for doubles here, you're either kind of like a structure player or a chaos player. Structure is, I like hand signals, I like set plays, I like things going according to the game plan and strategy. Versus chaos is, the longer the point goes, the more I have to run, like just like think like Nick Kyrgios. Mm-hmm. Right? When he plays doubles, it's just chaos. He's running all over the place, but just that athleticism, he thrives in that.
Yeah.
I think first off, so like we said, like you got to understand
your own. Do you think most people are structured or most are chaotic?
I want to say structured, like on the recreational side. Chaotic players, really, you need like a lot of athleticism. Like I know there's some people out there that are probably like, oh yeah, like I love running all over the place. But that doesn't necessarily mean like that's how you're getting ahead.
Yeah.
Unless you have that kind of athleticism to support it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, especially when I'm playing, right? And you see some people, like they don't like to talk at all. They prefer to just be in their own head. And I always attributed that to, like, you just don't know any better. Like you haven't practiced enough structured play to be able to know what might potentially work because you're thinking about your own technique or you're thinking about the thing that you just did wrong or incorrectly.
Yeah, I mean, that's more like mental fortitude or like detractors, right? Like, yeah, they haven't really learned how to communicate with their partner.
Yeah.
Like, structure or chaos is more about what requires more conscious mental energy or like emotional energy. So like if I'm a very structured player, when things are going well, like I don't have to put in any additional like mental energy to it. But then if I'm a structured player and I'm partnered with someone that's chaotic, right? Like them running back and forth, it just like, it drains me, it frustrates me. Oh, they poached when they shouldn't have, or they went for an easy, like what should have been an easy overhead for me, they went for a high backhand volley, right? And so it's tough for me because it's like I lose focus because we're so different sides of that spectrum.
So what are you? You say you're structured.
I'm very, very structured. I like simple, easy 1-2 punches.
Yeah.
I mean, like for most people that know me, I like having fun with the shots, but I like having like reliable structure or reliable set plays. Ooh, okay. And sorry. So there are like the extreme ends of that spectrum.
Right.
Right. And it's good to be a little bit somewhere in between. It's not like black and white. It's grayscale. I would say you're more structure, but you're adaptable enough. Like once again, it doesn't drain your mental energy as much.
And where does attitude then come into play with all of that? Because you talked a little bit about the mental piece of it, and it's hard for me to think and disambiguate that from the style that I want to play in during a match, right?
And I mean, so like a good doubles partner in general, you will find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yes, I want structure, but if my partner wants chaos, if they're too stubborn on that, like I just have to be a little bit more chaotic with the flow.
Yeah.
Right? Be willing to say, hey, you know what? They switched, so I'm going to switch.
Yeah.
Right? But then once again, the longer you play with someone, of course, you start to learn their characteristics and behavior. And you can make little adjustments there as well. But it's almost like somebody has to be like the more mature person and be like,
right,
I'm not going to be stubborn. I'm going to go with the flow a little bit more.
Yeah. So say I joined a new team. I'm, got bumped up to a 3-5. I don't know any of the people on my team anymore. What are the things that I should be thinking about? What are the things that a captain should be thinking about as they're pairing what you described as my style, which is adaptable but structured, to that new team?
One of the hardest parts, I think, especially, I mean, like you captain lots of teams, is like people forget like captaining adult teams is rough, right? I think it's a lot harder than kids, first off, because kids, you make their schedules available, so the kids are always available for that game that weekend, right? But adults, it's like you got work, you got your kids, you have other obligations, you have an appointment, you like there's so many other things. So even like the best laid plans of trying to set partners up, very well, I think we should be a little bit more thankful to our captains for just putting together the lineups that we have with availability. But in terms of trying to find that out, it is technically thinking like I don't want purely like identical players together. Like I do need someone that's like, okay, well, if they're, steady Eddie, I want somebody that's a little bit more athletic or a little bit more aggressive. Steady Eddie sets up the point, the aggressive player finishes it. But then you can start talking to each other. Hey, I'm going to make this backhand return cross court. You should think about like reverse poaching that. As always with any like relationship on and off court, it's just being comfortable talking to each other about it, just saying, hey, here's what I'm comfortable with. I think two chaotic players, like you kind of just throw them out and they just build off that kind of energy off each other. Like it's not even, hey, like I expected you to do that. It's, hey, good coverage, right? We switched and you switched and you just already knew, right? They kind of gel together that way.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's almost like dating, right? You can almost kind of feel that vibe a little bit.
And this has happened before, right? When you're playing a match or you're getting ready to play a match, the captain just announces the lineup. You've never even heard of this person. You don't know anything about this person. And perhaps the only time you meet that person is when you get on court. What would you say are the first couple of questions you would be asking that person or discussing with that person?
Yeah, the obvious one is the return side.
Yeah.
Like I think that's like the most basic kind of like along the structure concepts. Like you have to determine like your return side, and I think it's also very important for doubles teams to start thinking less about like what is just stronger for you, because then you might both say, well, both of us play better on the do side. You should think of kind of like, hey, you know what? I ask my partners if I've never met them before, like, which side do you think you can make more returns on?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think, like, if we're being honest here, like, my return game is probably the weakest part of my game. So very much so I say, hey, like, if you can make more returns on that side, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the number one question. Besides that,
like, do you think, because one way I like to phrase it sometimes, and I'll get players that tell me, oh, I can do either. And I started to switch my question, which was not so much which side do you prefer. I'd say something like to the extent of if it's game point and you wanted to choose a side, which side would you choose to receive on?
Yeah.
And that seems to at least, I don't know, start a better conversation about their strengths than just, hey, which side do you want to receive on?
That's like, it's so funny because I think sometimes we're almost too nice to people. Like we're trying to be polite. And like, at the end of the day, we should be thinking about what it takes to win as a new doubles pair.
Right.
So just like you're saying, anything that's a little bit more thought-provoking instead of just being like, oh, no, you can have it.
Yeah.
Right? Just getting them to say, hey, if it's game point, if it's match point, like, which side do you really want?
Yeah.
Right? And then, like, once again, like I said, I'm the more adaptable player in that. And I can say, hey, I'll take the other side.
Yeah.
And then you can take the deuce points.
Right. So receiving, that's an important one, right? Like, so which side are you going to receive on? What would you say is like the next thing?
The next one here, and this is like, it kind of depends on what your training or background is and kind of what level you are. But hopefully from 2-5, we'll start introducing signals.
Right.
And so you just got to ask the player, hey, do you want signals? Do you not want signals? Like, I think some players, like their whole team has been practicing signals, but you shouldn't be afraid to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with them. I recently played a doubles match and we had never played doubles before. And we were like, okay, we should do signals right from the get-go. But we didn't really get in sync and we didn't really find that rhythm. And so like we lost that first set. Second set, we said, hey, you know what? No signals.
Yeah.
right? And that just kind of let him, I think, focus a little bit more on feeling his first serve out and that first like serve plus one out.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Of the two signals, right? Which is where are you going to serve? And then what am I, as the net player, the doubles partner, going to be doing? What's my intention? And to your point, like if the server just isn't comfortable, I still feel like signaling is still important to communicate my intention. Serve wherever you want, but I'm going to give you a little bit of intention of what I plan on doing while I'm up there, which is still putting less pressure on them and more pressure on me to be able to do the thing that I want to do, right?
it's a commitment.
Yeah. And then there's somebody that only just wants the serve direction. Like they don't
Yeah.
care what you're going to do,
Yeah.
but they want you to be able to communicate to them where you want that serve to be placed, and you do whatever you want with it as the doubles partner. And then there are people that do both, which again, at our level, I haven't seen that much of it. But it's usually one or the other.
To your point, I don't know very many like 3-0, 3-5 guys that can consistently place their first serve.
Yeah.
It's either usually, they're going for a bomb or, they're just dinking it in. That's how they place it.
And some people need that direction too, right? Like I once worked with a guy that was playing and he needed somebody to tell him to serve in a specific spot. And that was like the only way he could consciously do it, is that if he had some type of pressure.
Yeah, sometimes it's like it's a lot of it is like rhythm and focus. When we're talking about hand signals, most people on the lower end of recreational tennis, I think they can handle probably just one kind of signal. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's like we don't want to have them to overthink it. A common scenario is you're doing hand signals and the net player calls poach and you're like, but my serve's kind of weak. You almost feel more pressure to like hit in a bigger serve.
Yeah.
But it's like but as the server, maybe I need to understand that I need to feel comfortable saying, hey, you know what, maybe you shouldn't poach, right? Often I see people call signals and it's like, if they're not comfortable with it, both partners need to say no.
Right.
Like you guys want to set each other up for as much success as possible.
That's true too. I would say that in the lower levels, like there's a little bit of, you don't want to tell your partner no.
Yeah.
Like if
you're
I
scared to, especially a new partner.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to, I don't know. Like if they have an intention, if they think that they could do something, you feel like you need to step up.
Yeah.
And align with their plan, as opposed to saying, no, like I cannot do that. I'm not going to be able to, if you're going to serve here, I'm not going to be able to do this other thing that you want me to do.
Hopefully that you're willing to still have that conversation before.
Yeah.
Right. Where, like if we've never played before, I could say, hey, I feel pretty confident in my first serve. If I make that first serve in, like, would you feel comfortable poaching?
Right.
Right. And like, so it doesn't have to just be signals. It could just be like the overall intention, like you said, behind the conversation.
And that has to do with like playing style too, right? So like, is that the next question? Hey, you know what? I like to serve and volley, or I like to be super active at the net, or listen, I'm not good at the net. I want to stay in the back, even if I won't admit it.
I mean, that's the biggest issue is like, once again, we're too polite. There's another doubles match this season, played with a brand new partner. And we were just very frank about it. We were like, I told him, I was like, I cannot grind out on the baseline. I said, hey, like, it's just much easier for me to do a true serve and volley.
Yeah.
I was like, that was great. Like, and we had that laid out expectation. Here's my comfort zones. This is what we should be building off of.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I think still people are too polite. If you don't tell your new partner your weakness, your opponents are definitely going to expose it along the match lines. And then I'd rather have my partner know, hey, I'm not going to be able to cover that lob if it goes over your left side. Rather have that kind of laid out, so maybe they stay further back.
Yeah.
Versus, it's set point and sorry, forgot, I can't do that.
Yeah, it's sometimes things that just come out after 4 games, and 4 games can go by really quick. And then suddenly you're seeing your partner perform in a certain way. And you're like, well, what do I need to do? How can I communicate to this person better? What do I need to do to kind of fill in that gap of the thing that I'm observing is just not working at the moment?
I think the one that I hear people complain the most about to me is that my partner can't run. You see them hit in practice, they're fine, they're drilling great. But then in a match, they just can't move. Maybe it's injuries, maybe it's age, whatever. But for whatever reason, it's like, if I can't move, like I need to tell my partner, because they need to know, like they're going to have to cover a lot more ground.
Yeah.
It's just a lot worse, because then not only are your opponents exposing that, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just found out too.
Yeah. In that example, you have identified that your partner can't move. Part of it is about communication, but especially in the moment where emotions are high, you do need to be sensitive to what you're saying to your partner, because that could completely change in a very negative way their performance. What would you say you would be discussing with your partner regarding the situation that you're observing, which is he's just not fast enough. My partner's just not fast enough, or he's not getting to the ball.
Instead of saying you should not miss those returns, it's saying we should pick higher margin targets for our returns, or we should try lobbing the return. Anything where it's like, if I can take the pressure off you and just say, here's what we can do together. I also get asked quite a lot about my partner's having a bad day, or they're getting isolated and picked on. Like, what can I do to help them? The only way you can help them is by moving in front of them. And it's so important to say, like, hey, Adonis, you can't out rally Alex cross court, right? He's just got a better cross court shot than you. Then if I know we're going to lose that point anyways, I might as well just poach. I might as well move in front of you, be that much more aggressive, because I know we're going to lose it anyways.
Right.
So that's changing the pattern, especially if you're not as mobile, or you're not as comfortable like changing to like an I formation or Australian. I might as well try to start putting myself in front of that ball. The worst case scenario is like, if you're up at the net, I'm back, and I'm like, hey, Adonis, stop missing your volleys. It's like, that doesn't help either of us. Right. So like, instead, like, I got to think about saying, hey, we could start two back. If you're not as mobile, you can stay up there, but stay in a more neutral, like around the service line, and I'll try to rush in front of you. Anything where it's like changing the outcome. The best part about that is a couple things are probably going to happen. One, the opponents are either going to start changing the direction, or two, even if I do miss, it takes more pressure off you, because it's like we're almost sharing the burden.
Right.
If they're able to isolate you an entire set, you're gonna go home and you're gonna be like, man, like, I let my new partner down. I literally lost a whole set on my own. And if we're talking about creating a good partnership down the road, you're going to be like, hey man, like, thank you for helping me. I didn't lose it alone. Like, we both tried to figure something out. If you can still feel like you're constructing towards something like positive there, even if you lose that, you're going to come back out the next time and be like, hey, we can work through this, right? Versus we keep saying stubborn players. Like, I think we all have that, like, that one person that we all know, and it's like, oh man, it's rough playing with them.
Let's talk about that, man, because that's so tough. I agree. And it's very difficult for it to not affect your own play.
Let's be honest, like, I wish I had like a simplistic answer on that one.
Yeah.
That's one where I'm just like, I still scratch my head and I'm like, we don't invite them back to the roster. I think, like, if we can at the end of the day convince them, hey, our number one goal here is to win. New pair, old pair, if you got put with them multiple times, if you can at least get them to say, hey, let's at least focus on figuring out how to win. Like, I still hear tons of coaches that always say, like, you need to play your game, stay on it. And like, I think that almost reinforces like that stubbornness, that ego. If your game's not winning, be adaptable, do what it takes to win. Your only hope is like, what can we do differently to win? If they're responsive to that, then great. Like, you can find a way. Just do the best that you can do and just have fun with it.
Tell us about your worst
tennis
partner.
One of my very first junior doubles tournament, me and this guy, like, we'd known each other from like match play, and like we'd been in the same junior program a little bit. We thought we were hot stuff. We're such good hitters, like, we'll just dominate on the doubles. And I'd started at that point a junior in high school. I started playing with this like older men's group at the club I grew up at. They were teaching me quite a lot. Like, I got learned very, very quick. We got crushed. During the warm-up, it was so typical. We were like, oh, we're way better hitters than these guys. But then the team that we played against, you know, they actually moved like a doubles team. They shifted and they covered well, versus like me and this guy, we played like half court single. But the hardest part was like, I kept trying to talk to him. He literally just like would just kind of walk to the next starting position. It's like one of those things now, you see the teams lose a point, they still high five, they pick it back up, they focus on like what they can do next. And he was just like, robot, shut off. I feel like it was like a 1-0. We killed ourselves out there. But that was like a huge learning lesson just in general, just like how to approach partners and just how to talk to people. And you can't just expect to be like an amazing hitter and win that doubles game. Like, a lot of it is just, what are your actual doubles assets? What are your skills and how you construct that? So I'd say I'm just pretty fortunate to never have any of these extreme situations. So
I don't know, maybe I've just had plenty, too much. So maybe the problem is me.